The Paid to Play podcast. Sam Powers, Master Illusionist. By PC Pod or Pad, you're listening to Paid to Play. I'm Rob Farker, your host for this weekly exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits that you worry make you seem silly, geeky or odd, into your income-generating life is one of the best things you can do in your life. It might not be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear, and I want to show you how. Well, speaking of danger, I don't think my guests get more dangerous than this man. When he was 3, he witnessed a live magic show at kindergarten. Barely 2 years later, he was performing his own magic show for his school teachers. We fast forward a decade to find him on national TV, and then, when most youngsters are celebrating their adulthood by abusing their newfound right to drink, he was celebrating the award of Australian Magician of the Year in the adult stage magic category, the first of 5 such awards he's earned. He became the youngest ever president in the International Brotherhood of Magicians at just 19 years. His career has taken him not just around Australia, but also around the world, keeping 20 million pairs of eyes glued to his feats on The Today Show, Mornings, The Footy Show, A Current Affair, 7 News, 9 News, 10 News, the Disney Channel and MTV. Recently, he has partnered with 6 other magicians in the live show The Illusionists 2.0, in which he takes the role of the Enigma. The real enigma is how any human being could have the stamina to perform 400 high-energy live shows a year. Tonight, I don't care what time it is while you're listening, this is a chat with a showman, so tonight, my guest is International Man of Magic, Sam Powers. And I hope to lift the curtain on what it takes to get paid to play with magic and illusion. Sam, thank you very much for coming on the Paid to Play podcast.
Great to be here, Rob. Feels like I need to retire after that introduction. That's pretty good.
You're welcome. But crying out loud, starting out in magic at age 3, I mean, that's while most of us are perhaps still waiting for the big transformative experience that tells us what we're going to be doing with our lives, you happened upon it earlier on. Can you tell us a bit more what that moment was like? Paint a picture for us, where you were and how it felt while you were watching your first magic show?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was 3 years old, so I was, young and wide-eyed, and I recall the magician performing at our Christmas party, and he called me up as a volunteer to help out, with the magic, and I just remember feeling, thinking that the magic was real and it was just amazing, and that's all it was. It was a fascination at that time. All kids love magic, really, and but for me, it was. Wanting to see more and then learn and be able to do it myself. So yeah, it's been fun.
So then 2 years later, of course, you're doing your own magic show. What was it like in those intervening 2 years when you actually started digging into the reality of creating a magic show for an audience?
Well, I mean, I guess that was, an accident, really. I was given a magic kit by my parents for Christmas, and I didn't really understand much of it because, I was 5 years old. I kind of thought, magic was real, and when all these secrets were in this box, I thought, well, maybe this is the other kind of magic that's not real. I was still very young, and but at the same time, I was doing stuff that was fooling my school teachers. I was reading their minds and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and to the point where they'd call other school teachers into the classroom to watch what I was doing because it was so much fun that this little kid was doing all this crazy stuff. So yeah.
Was there ever a point of perhaps disappointment when you kind of realized that it was, I guess, skill and technique rather than mystical power?
I guess this is a little embarrassing to admit, but it was 14 when I read this book called The Encyclopedia of Magic by Mark Wilson, and in the foreword there, his last few words were regarding magic: "If only it were but real." And when I read that, I thought, wow, this is really what I'm getting into. When you become a magician, you surrender your right to be amazed forevermore.
Mm.
And but the whole journey is about recreating that experience that you felt the first time when you were a child, for every single person you perform to, and that's why it's so much fun.
Mm. So, of course, a few years later, as we said in the introduction, you'd already achieved a whole lot. But what was it? What was it like actually getting into the industry? How did you go from being the young fella at 14 who had basically just realized what magic was really all about to becoming the youngest ever president of the International Brotherhood of Magic and getting onto national TV at 15 years of age?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I went to a pretty good school, as a child, and I was quite academic. So, the last thing your parents want to hear after putting a kid through a good school is that they want to run away with the circus.
Mm, mm,
So I figured when I left, I wanted to do everything possible to demonstrate to my parents that this wasn't some kind of craze or hobby. I was deadly serious and passionate about the whole thing. So I went on, locked myself away for 12 hours a day, rehearsing and practicing for the Australian Championships and gaining respect amongst my peers. And when I won, that Magic title, and then my peers, elected me as president of the Magic Association, that was really to demonstrate to my parents that I'm really serious about this magic thing. And
mm.
I went from doing small birthday parties for kids, to working restaurants, and then doing small company parties, and building up to cruise ships and big corporate events, and then theatres and TV. So it was all a progression from those early days doing kids' birthday parties.
Tell me a little bit about some of those peers, some of the people who you got involved with when you were starting out and who, perhaps showed you the ropes.
Well, funny enough, the magician I saw when I was 3, his name is Peter Wood. He's probably the best kids magician in Australia, in my opinion. We're very good friends right now. In fact, when I joined the Junior Magic Club, at the time he was treasurer of that Magic Association, and when I met him there, it was like meeting, Bon Jovi or something. For me, it was like, meeting my childhood hero,
Yeah.
and so we became friends, and he helped me along the way, and I met a lot of other magicians through that association. To the point where it just gave me a great amount of satisfaction that they believed I was at a standard that was worthy of winning the Magic Championships in the adult category. I was only just turned 18, so in the adult category, I was competing with 40, 50-year-old, much more experienced magicians from not just Australia, but all around the South Pacific and Australasia.
Mm.
So it was definitely throwing myself in the deep end, but it was a lot of fun.
It certainly sounds like it was one incredible experience. You mentioned that something that I'm curious about now. A little earlier on, you said that you sort of, when you won the competition and graduated into your career as a magician, you were doing a lot of restaurant shows. So was it uh, stage performances? Did you actually have a separate stage there, or was it more of a you sort of imagine a restaurant as not necessarily being a straight up entertainment venue and you as more roaming tables and that sort of thing? What was that like? And especially trying to get and keep the attention of people who are sort of, there perhaps a little bit to socialize and also enjoy their meals.
Well, that's right. I mean, essentially, my job was, performing close-up magic to the tables. So my role there was after the, made their order. That's when I'd go in for the kill. And if the meals were coming out late, I'd assist by, performing at that table to take their mind off the fact that the meals are coming in late. Or, there's always that 10, 15 minutes from when you order to when your entrees come out. That's when
Mm.
I'd come in and make their experience very memorable and, entertain, in small tables at a time, 10-minute sets I was doing 4 or 5 resident restaurants per week. That's about 20 hours of magic, or it's a lot of magic per week. In the close-up field, and that's where I gained all my skills as a close-up magician. Which now in my stage show, I always keep some close-up magic sleight of hand in the show, but we use a live broadcast camera that projects it onto a massive screen on the stage, so people can appreciate that magic on the big level is not just trapdoors, smoke, and mirrors, and girls in bikinis. There's actually a genuine skill that you have with physical dexterity within your fingers, which I think the audience appreciates, seeing the contrast now of close-up magic and grand illusion.
It's an incredible thing to see these big performances there on the stage, especially when you're doing things like turning a Mini Cooper into a Ferrari. But it's still something else to actually take it off the stage and have it right there with you when you're actually it's just you and them, and they're still trying to figure out where how it's happening in front of them when they've got their eyes right on you. It's an amazing thing. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I am still yet to see one of your shows. But on that topic, 400 shows a year, especially nowadays, how do you do it? Where do you find that stamina to do at least what averages out to over one show every day of the year?
Well, that's averaging out over the year. I mean, there are times where I might do, 4, 5, or 6 shows per day. When we're on tour, we're doing a minimum of 3 shows a day, and they're big, grand shows. But you look at people like David Copperfield, who's 59 years old and performing 600 shows per year
Wow.
in his own showroom at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So 400's good, 600, that's pretty special.
Certainly is, yes. Now, out of curiosity, of course, in between performing shows, you, of course, have to manage the rest of the aspects of being a performing magician, the business aspects of it. How did you, I guess, when you were starting out, how did you make sure that you were keeping going, you were investing in yourself as a business and not just as a performer? And especially now as you have the title of Managing Director of International Magic, what is it like running a stage performing business?
Well, that's right. I mean, when you decide to become an actor or a musician or a magician or anything in that trade, you're entering the show business. And the show business has 2 words, of which the word business is the much bigger word than the show. So the business is the biggest aspect of the whole operation, learning how to market the product, how to sell it, how to use social media, and how to package the corporate events. It's a very important aspect of the whole showbiz package, and I'm constantly learning. I'm doing a marketing course right now on various aspects of social media, and I'm always learning and learning how to run the business. At one stage, my company had 30 staff while I was operating the casino show in Cairns, and that's pretty big for a guy that started out doing kids' birthday parties on his own. So it's really important, and learning now how to edit video and how to edit music, and it's all very important to be an all-rounder, especially in Australia where the market is a lot smaller. Unless you're doing a lot of international work, you need to be very versatile in this market to stay alive and survive. Yeah.
So what is your national and international schedule like at the moment? I mean, recently you did, I believe, has the Illusionists wound up, or is that still running?
No, they're going from strength to strength. So the show is on a world tour at the moment. We're waiting for 6 months of dates to be released all throughout Asia next, which is Macau, Singapore, Manila, and Bangkok. And then from there we go to South America and move on from there. The original version of the show, Illusionist 1, is currently on a Broadway engagement, and they've officially sold more tickets than any other magic show in Broadway history. So it's a great company to be part of.
Wow. And you'll be, from the sounds of it, eventually after you hit South America, quite possibly moving into that New York Broadway scene yourself, following up on the Illusionists one. Is that on the cards?
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Absolutely. It's also London and West End as well. So it's we're all on the journey and we're looking forward to it.
Ah, fantastic. Look, skipping back very quickly to those early days when you were just getting your start out, uh, because of course at that time I would imagine that being a full, you didn't start out as a full-time magician. It was uh, a gig in amongst other things that you were doing to make sure that you were earning enough money to pay rent and keep food on the table. Was that right?
Um, it's funny. I started doing kids' birthday parties when I was 14 before I could even drive,
Yeah.
and I was making $40 a hit, and my mates were making $8 an hour at McDonald's. So by the time I was lucky, by the time I was finishing high school, I was making 2 or 3 grand in cash on a weekend just doing kids' birthday parties.
Wow.
And so by the time I left school, I was very comfortable just with what I was doing, and would have been very easy for me to just take those easy gigs on the weekend and do that. But that's not where I wanted to be. So no, I've to answer the question, I've never had a real job before. But it was very difficult to push myself away from restaurants and kids parties into bigger, more risky stuff. Running casino shows and doing corporate events and cruise ships. And so I just had to set a date for myself that on this date, this will be my last ever kids show. This will be my last restaurant, and never looked back. And I never did. I suffered for a year. The phone was ringing hot for Magic Sam back then, and every phone call I had to say no. I've got a great guy, Peter Wood, but I had to set myself that goal to purely focus on the bigger stuff, to move away from the kid stuff. So I've been lucky to have a full-time career in magic since I left school.
It sounds kind of like the inverse of the problem that some people have when they're getting into their thing of trying to find the time for it, whereas is in your case, as you effectively already had an established business early out of the gate. The problem wasn't so much with the success of the business; it was making sure that you didn't settle into a groove and get complacent.
Well, that's right. And when I say that, that's just based on my personal goals. There are plenty of full-time kids entertainers that just love that, and they're very happy doing that, and they do it very well. And for me, the goal was, when I saw David Copperfield the first time, I just wanted to be like him, like a rock star on stage.
Yeah.
Back in his heyday, I mean, he was cooler than a rock star. He was just he was amazing, and that's what I wanted to aspire to be.
Mm.
So yeah, you're right. It was yeah, very very a very difficult decision to pack away those the kids magic show that was making me such a great easy living, and moving on to bigger and more risky things.
Mm. You have got yourself a phenomenal career and the attention of people around the world. I mean, how big is your fan base at the moment? And especially in this still kind of new internet age that we find ourselves in, um, how do you keep on top of all of your relationships whilst making sure that you are still building your audience?
Well, yeah, good question. I mean, look, I've got 6 or 7 thousand fans on Facebook, which it's not like there's 6 or 7 million,
Mm.
so it's not that huge, but it's definitely something that needs to be managed, and keeping the Facebook fresh as often as possible, but also keeping up with Twitter. I'm now on Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel, and it's a constant battle just to keep everything new and fresh and exciting
Mm.
all the way through. So yeah, social media these days is just, as you know, a very very important aspect of the business.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a little earlier on that when you were performing out of the Reef Hotel Casino in Cairns, you had a team of about 30 people. And of course, when you are doing any kind of stage event, whether it's locally based or even perhaps more so if you're doing a touring event, there is an army of people behind you that most of the time you don't see. Can you tell me a little bit more about your regular team, and of course about one member of your team in particular who it seems like you are lucky enough to be able to share the stage spotlight and your enthusiasm for magic with?
Sure. So what you're asking is, sorry, the team that I'm working with currently. You'd like
Yeah.
me to elaborate on that? Sure. So the I have an illusion director, which is a very interesting job description. He's a close friend of mine that I trust with my life, that
Mm.
basically acts as my second set of eyes. Whenever we do TV, I can't be on set doing a tech rehearsal and checking the lights and making sure the sound is correct, making sure the camera operators are briefed on the correct angles. That's where Andrew comes in. He's a full-time illusion director. He's worked with some of the biggest names in magic all around the world. And currently now on my team, we're working on a TV concept together. And then there's my on stage principal assistant, Robin McFarlane, who
Mm.
is the girl you see on stage most of the time we perform. I do have several assistants based on availability for different types of shows, but Robin is the principal assistant and the best one that I've had. And I've got to trust her with my life as well, because when it comes to performing the material that we do, the grand illusions, where it's literally split second precision timing, it's millimeters and milliseconds away from being a disaster. But at the same time, looking like an absolute miracle with the trust that I place in her, for the partnership to work, in sync with each other to make everything look as amazing as it does. That kind of trust I don't have with any of my other assistants.
Mm.
Robin has been with the show now for 5 years, probably 2,000 shows.
That is fantastic. It's something that perhaps when we're watching a magic show that we kind of tend to downplay, that because of all the hard work that you folks put in the back end and making sure that the show is as polished as possible, there is this thing at the back of the mind when you see what appears to be a particularly death-defying piece of magic, piece of illusion, that the magic, pardon me, the risk is greatly played up, and that it is perhaps there are all sorts of countermeasures that you don't see that are actually reducing the actual amount of risk. I mean, is that the case? How much work does go into making sure that everything is running smoothly, and how much risk is there in these big set pieces that people expect of you?
Sure. So it depends on exactly what type of illusion or escape number we're talking about. When it comes to physical escapes, in terms of the Houdini style escape stunts, most of those are pretty legitimate. Working in the show I'm in now, the Illusionist 2.0. There's a guy called the Daredevil who literally uses no magic technology or illusion techniques at all. He literally puts his life on the line every show. He's absolutely crazy, and the measures that go in place for that act to be possible on stage each night is quite amazing. The amount of staff and safety officers backstage is just incredible. He literally sets himself on fire, hanging on a rope, getting out of a straitjacket. It's quite incredible. Whereas on the illusion side of things, where I'm performing an illusion that looks very dangerous, in reality, whilst the danger may not be what it appears to be to the audience, there are other aspects of the illusion that the audience is unaware of that are extremely dangerous for the performers, which the audience would never know about. They just see the big shiny spikes that look like they would be the dangerous component of that illusion, whereas there's other stuff going on that's far more dangerous than that.
Wow. It is as it must be for most people tempting to ask you for examples and details, but of course, that's asking you to reveal your secrets, which a magician never does. So I will refrain. But in closing, uh, what three pieces of advice would you give to somebody who is starting out or is even just toying with the idea of getting into magic and illusion and live performance, whether they were three things that maybe you wish someone had told you when you started out?
Sure. Look, I think one thing I got from David Copperfield was what he calls the three P's. The first thing you need is the passion. You're not going to get anywhere without absolute passion toward what you do. Then there's the preparation, and then persistence. Those three, I believe, are the keys to success. You must be absolutely passionate about what you do, whether it's as a performing musical artist or an actor or a circus performer or a magician or anything at all. Without the passion, nothing else is going to work. And then the preparation in terms of acquiring your skill, learning everything you can about your art form, learning everything about performing and managing an audience, stagecraft, showmanship, and then persistence. You just need to keep persisting and never give up. And with those three combined, it's very, very hard to fail.
One thing that has amazed me in doing these interviews is how a lot of people find ways to take their success and pay it forward. How have you been able to do that in your career?
Can you rephrase that question for me?
Well, one thing that did come up, I think, in some of the notes that we put together was some of the charity work that you do, that it's something that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my very first ever professional show was a show I performed at my high school where we donated all the money from the ticket sales to the Indian missions who needed the money much more than I did. And that was a turning point for me where I realized that, I was, with what I love to do, I was able to, support, other people in more need than me. And from there, I've never said no to a charity or any possible opportunity I can to help. I've raised in my career, over $2 million for 100 different charities. I've become the ambassador for Guide Dogs Queensland and Red Cross Queensland, and all different types of things, from people that are dying of cancer that send me letters saying, hey, can you come and perform at our fundraiser to help raise money for this cause, to visiting sick children in hospitals that would otherwise never get a chance to see anything like this. And it's a really great thing to be involved with, which really keeps the whole thing real. And I think that's if you're in a position where you are able to give back, it's a wonderful thing to do.
I can imagine it must be tough for some people sometimes, especially when they're performing and getting caught up in the practice of what they do and the thrill of being able to hold the attention of so many, that sometimes you do need to keep what you do grounded. And it sounds like you found a fantastic way to do that.
Definitely doing my best, that's for sure.
All right, Sam. Well, now that people have heard our chat, where can they go to track you down and find out a bit more about you and where you're going to be performing next?
Yeah, sure. Well, we've just launched our brand new website. It's sampowers.com.au. All the information is on there, and including all the links to our YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So that's sampowers.com.au. Have a look around and drop me an email and definitely say hi.
Well, Sam Powers, thank you very much again for coming on to the Paid to Play podcast. It's been fantastic chatting with you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Rob. Cheers.
And thank you very much for listening. Thank you very, very much. It means a lot to me that you are downloading this episode and getting it between your ears, and I hope that the chat in this episode was of help to you. Now, there are a couple of things that I would like to ask you to do for me. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to it on iTunes or your preferred podcast aggregator. And while you're there, could you give it a rating and leave a review, please? Also, on social media, could you like, favourite and share it? The Paid to Play podcast has pages on Facebook and Google+. Please like the page or add it to your circles as appropriate. Like +1 and share the episodes. And also join the Facebook group Fans of the Paid to Play podcast. There is also a Paid to Play podcast channel on YouTube where I upload the episodes. Please like and share them, and I would love to see your comments there. If you are a Twitterer, I am there as well. You can follow me at ByRobF. That's Bravo Yankee Romeo Oscar Bravo Foxtrot. I tweet the episodes on there, so if you could please favourite and retweet as well. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I would love it if you could sign up to Patreon and back the Paid to Play podcast. You will find the Patreon page for this podcast at www.patreon.com. That's Papa Alpha Tango Romeo Echo Oscar November.com/paid to play, all one word. Patreon is a crowdfunding website where, instead of backing a specific project once, people back ongoing projects like podcasts on a per month or per episode basis. You'll find my milestones and goals for the Patreon campaign there, and it would be great if you could get behind this podcast on a financial basis, even if it's just for $1 an episode. It will help me make the podcast bigger and better. I will be able to put a little bit more time and cash into it, and that way it will be able to better help you get paid to play. Now, next week's episode is going to be an even episode, which means it's Money Where My Mouth Is, Musings and Mailbag. It's where I talk about my own progress toward getting paid to play, put a little bit of overthinking into some of the issues I've encountered, and the overall idea of taking what you love doing and asking people to pay you for the products and skills of doing what you love. And I also answer your questions and read out your feedback. So I would love any mailbag submissions you might have. You can get in touch with me via any of the aforementioned social media. You can either leave a comment on the page or send me a private message. You can also email me at podcast@robf.com.au. Please indicate that your comment or email or private message is a mailbag question, and that you're okay for me to read it out on the episode, and also whether you're okay with me giving your name or online ID as the person who submitted the feedback or question. And if you've got multiple online IDs, please let me know which one you would prefer me to use. I am not a psychologist or trained therapist or coach. I'm just a guy with a mic and a dream and a little bit of experience and perspective. But again, I would love to hear from you. So, until next time, this is Rob Farker asking you to stand by your play. You might be surprised how many folks appreciate it. I license the interview and monologue content of the Paid to Play podcast under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 3.0 unported license. That roughly means you can sample, remix and redistribute it as long as you tell people that the bits of it you use came from Rob Farker and don't charge anyone for your work. For the full legal text, go to creativecommons.org. The theme music is written, performed by, copyright and used with the kind permission of Miracle of Sound. All rights reserved. For more great music inspired by geek culture, check out miracleofsound.net. This podcast is hosted by Business Web Integrations. Get in touch with them at businesswebintegrations.com.au to discuss your web hosting and business needs.